My girlfriend dumped me after I paid for her education, just to marry a rich guy. I honestly don't even know where to start because I feel like my entire life just exploded. For the last 5 years, I dedicated every waking moment to supporting my girlfriend so she could achieve her dreams. And now, just when we were supposed to start building a life together, she tells me she's leaving me for a guy she met at her new job. I feel like the dumbest person on earth right now. How it all started. We met 6 years ago at a small community event when I was 24 and she was 21. It was one of those love at first sight moments, at least for me. She was smart, ambitious, and stunningly beautiful. We talked for hours that night, and by the end, I felt like I had met my soulmate. Back then, I was working as a warehouse manager, and she was a full-time student with big dreams of becoming a lawyer. But money was tight, her dad wasn't around, and her mom was a single parent working 2 jobs just to get by. She told me early on that she wasn't sure if she'd even be able to finish college, let alone go to law school, because of how expensive everything was. At the time, I wanted to be her knight in shining armor. I told her I'd help in any way I could, and I meant it. I loved her, and I wanted to see her succeed. I didn't know it then, but that decision would change everything. The sacrifices. It started small. During our first year of dating, I'd pay for groceries, books, and her phone bill. She told me she didn't want to feel like a burden, but I brushed it off because I wanted to make her life easier. Then she got accepted into her dream university to finish her undergraduate degree. That's when things got serious. She told me she didn't think she could afford tuition, and I immediately said, "Don't worry, I've got you." Looking back now, I cringe at how naive I was. I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse, started freelancing on weekends, and even sold some of my old stuff, gaming consoles, collectibles, whatever I could, to help cover her costs. She moved into my apartment rent-free, and I made sure she had everything she needed to focus on her studies. At the time, I felt like it was worth it. I kept telling myself, when she makes it big, we'll both benefit. This is an investment in our future. By the time she graduated, I had drained nearly all my savings, maxed out one of my credit cards, and even taken on a small personal loan to help her. She was so grateful, or at least that's what I thought. She cried and told me she didn't know how she could ever repay me. She even promised that once she started her career, she'd help me get back on my feet financially. But then came law school, and the cycle repeated. She got into a prestigious program, and the tuition was even more expensive in undergrad. Again, I stepped up. I picked up a second job, working evenings as a delivery driver. I barely slept for 3 years, but I told myself it was worth it because we were a team. I was supporting the woman I loved, and we were going to build a life together. Looking back, there were so many signs that something wasn't right, but I was too blinded by love to see them. The signs I ignored. During her last year of law school, she started pulling away. She was always too busy with classes or internships to spend time with me. When we did hang out, she seemed distant, always glued to her phone or talking about her new amazing friends from law school. I chalked it up to stress. I figured she was just overwhelmed with school, and once she graduated, things would go back to normal. But after graduation, things got worse. She got a job at a high-profile law firm in the city, and suddenly, I barely saw her. She was always working late or going to networking events. When I asked if we could spend more time together, she told me I needed to understand how demanding her career was. I didn't want to be the jealous, clingy boyfriend, so I backed off. I told myself she was just focused on setting up her future, and once she settled into the job, we'd finally be able to enjoy life together. Then, one night, out of nowhere, she dropped the bombshell. The breakup. She came home from work and said we needed to talk. My heart sank immediately because I could tell from her tone that it wasn't going to be good. She told me she'd been thinking a lot about her life and her future, and that she didn't see us working out anymore. I was stunned. I asked her what I'd done wrong, and she said it wasn't about me. It was about her. "You'll always have a special place in my heart," she said. "But I can't pass up the chance to build the life I've always dreamed of." That's when she dropped the second bombshell. She admitted she had met someone at work, a senior partner at her firm, who was more aligned with the life she wanted. She said he came from money, had a powerful career, and could give her the lifestyle she deserved. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her if she loved him, and she said, "I think I could." I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. 5 years of my life gone. All the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights, all the money I poured into her education. None of it mattered. She was walking away like it was nothing. The worst part, she didn't even offer to pay me back. When I brought up the money, she just said, "I never asked you to do any of that. You chose to help me." Hearing those words felt like a knife to the chest. I couldn't believe the person I'd loved so deeply could be so cold. Picking up the pieces. Since then, I've been trying to pick up the pieces of my life. I'm drowning in debt, working 2 jobs, and still living in the same crappy apartment we shared. Meanwhile, she's living it up with her new rich boyfriend, posting pictures of fancy dinners and vacations on Instagram, like I never even existed. Update. After my girlfriend, well, ex now, walked out on me, I spent weeks spiraling. I was drowning in debt, working 2 jobs, and barely scraping by. Meanwhile, she was off living her best life with her new rich boyfriend. I couldn't help but torture myself by checking her social media. Every post was like a punch to the gut. Fancy dinners, weekend trips to luxury resorts, designer clothes. It felt like she had upgraded her entire life overnight. And I was nothing but a stepping stone she had left in the dirt. I'll admit, I was bitter. I hated her for what she did. But part of me still couldn't stop caring. That's what makes this whole situation even harder to wrap my head around. Then, about 2 months after she left me, a mutual friend, let's call him Mike, reached out. Mike had always been closer to her than to me, so I was surprised when he messaged me out of the blue. He told me he'd been keeping up with her life, and something about her new husband didn't sit right with him. Apparently, he'd heard rumors that the guy wasn't as wealthy or successful as he claimed to be. At first, I brushed it off. I didn't want to get involved. Honestly, I didn't even want to think about her anymore. But then Mike dropped a bombshell. He had done some digging and found out that the guy had been married before. Not once, but twice. Both times ended in disaster. And both ex-wives had accused him of some seriously shady behavior. Curiosity got the best of me. I started digging into this guy myself, and the more I found, the crazier it got. Turns out, he'd been sued multiple times for fraud and embezzlement. He had even been arrested once, though the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. There were rumors that he'd scammed women before, convinced them he was wealthy, married them, then drained their bank accounts before disappearing. What's worse, he was in serious debt. Despite all the flash and luxury he flaunted online, it was all a front. He owed money to several creditors and had defaulted on multiple loans. His rich lifestyle was nothing but smoke and mirrors, and from what I could tell, he was one bad day away from the whole thing crashing down. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, I wanted to laugh. Here's the guy she left me for, and he was a complete fraud. On the other hand, I couldn't shake this feeling of pity. She might have used me and broken my heart, but she didn't deserve to end up with someone like that. Or did she? Honestly, I didn't know anymore. I didn't reach out to her. Why would I? She made her bed. Now she could lie in it. But a week later, she called me out of nowhere. At first, I didn't even recognize the number. When I answered and heard her voice, my stomach dropped. She sounded panicked, almost hysterical. I know you probably hate me, she said, but I need your help. You were right about everything. I didn't say anything at first. I just let her talk. And oh boy, did she talk. Apparently, she had started noticing some weird behavior from her new husband. He'd been secretive about money, refusing to let her see their joint accounts. He was constantly taking phone calls in the middle of the night, leaving the house for business meetings without any explanation. Then she found out he'd been opening credit cards in her name, racking up massive debts. The final straw, she discovered emails between him and someone else. Another woman. He had been stringing her along the entire time. And when she confronted him, he just laughed in her face. She told me, he said, "What are you going to do about it? Leave? You got nothing without me." She begged me to help her, said she didn't know who else to turn to, and that I was the only one who might actually care. She even apologized for everything. Said she realized how badly she had treated me, that she never should have left. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up on her. After everything she put me through, why should I help her? But another part of me couldn't ignore the fact that she was genuinely scared. She told me she felt trapped, like she had no way out. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided to help. Not because I forgave her, but because I couldn't stand the thought of her being stuck in that situation. I sent her all the information I had on the guy, his lawsuits, his debts, everything. I even connected her with a lawyer I knew through one of my jobs. She said she was going to confront him and start the process of getting out of the marriage. I told her to be careful. Guys like him don't go down without a fight. She called me again a few days later to thank me. Said she had confronted him, and he completely freaked out. He threatened her, saying that if she ever tried to leave, he'd ruin her career and make sure she never worked again. But with the lawyer's help, she was able to start the process of separating their finances and filing for divorce. As of now, she's staying with a friend while she sorts everything out. She asked if we could meet up so she could apologize in person, but I told her I needed time to think about it. Honestly, I'm not sure if I even want to see her again. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. But that doesn't erase everything she put me through. Final update. After helping my ex gather evidence against her scammer husband, I thought I was done with her for good. She thanked me, apologized for what she did to me, and promised she'd make things right. But I wasn't sure if I believed her. I'd already spent so much of my life on her. Emotionally, financially, mentally. Part of me just wanted to move on and never hear from her again. At the same time, I couldn't ignore this small, nagging voice in the back of my head. Did she really mean it? Could she actually change? I wasn't holding my breath, but a part of me wondered if I'd ever get closure. Or maybe even justice. While I was trying to focus on rebuilding my own life, I couldn't help but hear updates about her. Mutual friends kept me in the loop, whether I wanted to know or not. Apparently, things had gone from bad to worse. Her scammer husband drained what little money she had left, maxed out multiple credit cards in her name, and vanished. She was left with nothing. No money, no job security, no place to live. She was staying with a friend, scrambling to put her life back together. Meanwhile, I was slowly digging myself out of the financial hole she helped put me in. I picked up extra shifts, started budgeting aggressively, even found a part-time freelance gig that paid decently. It wasn't glamorous, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was making progress. I kept telling myself that her problems weren't my responsibility anymore. But every now and then, I'd think about how she used to look at me when we were happy. How she once said I was her rock, her partner, her future. It's hard to just turn off feelings like that, even after everything that happened. One day, I was at a coffee shop, working on some freelance stuff, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned around, and there she was, my ex. She looked different, tired, worn down, not at all like the confident, polished woman I remembered from when she first started her new job. She looked like someone who had hit rock bottom. She asked if she could sit down. I let her. Honestly, I was too shocked to say no. She started talking, apologizing again for what she did to me, thanking me for helping her with her husband, admitting that she'd completely screwed up her life. She said leaving me was the biggest mistake she'd ever made, that she regretted it every single day. I didn't say much. I just let her talk. And the more she talked, the more I realized something. I didn't feel the way I thought I would. I didn't feel angry, or vindictive, or even sad. I just felt detached. Like I was finally seeing her for who she really was. Someone who made bad choices and didn't think about the consequences until it was too late. And here's where things take a weird turn. As we were talking, someone at the coffee shop overheard our conversation. A woman sitting at the table next to us. After my ex left, she introduced herself. She told me she was impressed by how calmly I handled the situation and asked if I'd ever considered working in project management. At first, I thought she was joking. But then she explained that she owned a small marketing agency and was looking for someone who could handle logistics, client relationships, and problem-solving under pressure. She said I seemed like someone who had experience managing difficult situations. Boy, did I. She gave me her card and told me to call her if I was interested. I almost didn't call. It sounded too good to be true. But something in me said, what do you have to lose? So I called her, went in for an interview. And a week later, I had a new job, a real job, with better pay, benefits, and a chance to actually build a career. It felt like the first real break I'd gotten in years. Meanwhile, things weren't getting any better for my ex. She tried to get her old job back at the law firm, but they wouldn't rehire her. Apparently, her husband had burned some bridges there before he disappeared, and the firm didn't want to deal with the drama. She ended up taking a lower-paying job at a small legal office just to make ends meet. A few weeks later, she reached out to me again. She wanted to start over. She said she missed me, that she had changed, that she wanted to make things right between us. She even offered to pay me back some of the money I'd spent on her education once she got back on her feet. For a split second, I considered it. Then I thought about everything I'd been through because of her, how much I had sacrificed, how little she had appreciated it, and how easily she had thrown me away when something better came along. And suddenly, it hit me. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her money. I didn't need her validation. I was finally free. I told her no, politely but firmly. I said I was glad she was trying to turn her life around, but I didn't think we should be part of each other's lives anymore. She looked devastated, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel bad. I felt in control. Since then, things have only gotten better for me. My career is thriving. I'm meeting new people, and I even started dating someone who genuinely cares about me. Funny enough, the woman I'm dating now, she's the one who introduced me to the marketing agency owner. Turns out, life is a way of surprising you, and sometimes, karma doesn't need your help. It is just fine on its own. Did you enjoy the story? One more. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more wild and unhinged Reddit stories. Your support means a lot and helps my channel grow.